Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Clocked In with the Press, hosted at Altman Studios in beautiful downtown Brentwood, California. In this podcast, we highlight news stories, individuals, and organizations that deserve your attention. This is your host, Melissa Van Rooten, clocking in. Today, we'll be chatting with Lauren Huffmaster, founder of Adventure Therapy Foundation. I'll let her tell you all about what the organization is and who it serves, but first, let's hear a quick word from this episode's sponsor.
Today's episode is sponsored by our friends at Sip & Scoop in downtown Brentwood. Sip & Scoop delivers smiles for miles, sip by sip and scoop by scoop. Gelato, Italian ice, and signature coffee beverages are just a few of the delicious treats on their menu. Stop by Sip & Scoop at 234 Oak Street in downtown Brentwood to get your fix. They're also on DoorDash.
Thank you so much, and jumping right in. Welcome to Clocked In, Lauren. We're so happy to have you here. Why don't you start just by telling us a little about yourself, your family, all that sort of stuff.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And yes, I live in Oakley. And with my family, I have 3 girls who are 13, 11, and 9, and live here with my husband, who's a first responder. I have been living here for about 7 years, and during that time, I've been living with cancer for the whole time we've been living here.
Tell us a little bit about your own cancer diagnosis.
So I was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 35. I started out in stage 3 cancer and went through every typical treatment, everything you would think of a woman going through. I had chemo that left me bald, radiation that burned my skin, and then lots and lots of surgeries to both preventative, and I had a double mastectomy as well. So multiple surgeries, but that entire process lasted over 18 months, close to 2 years. And at the very end of that first round of treatments, I had a PET scan. It was supposed to be a baseline scan so that moving forward, I would know where I ended. But instead, when they did my baseline scan for post-treatment, they found that I had stage 4 cancer. And the cancer at that point had spread throughout my bones, all down my spine, my ribs, all of that into my hips. And so, of course, that was a devastating diagnosis because I was supposed to be able to check this off that, yay, I did it. I did all the fun things and got it done. And now it's time to live life. But instead, I found out I was starting all over again. So it was a very, very dark season for me. But stage 4 cancer today, in today's world of technology and medicine, is extremely different than stage 3. I have now been living stage 4 for 5 years, and for 3 of those years, I've had no evidence of disease, which is miraculous. It's something the doctors would not even acknowledge for at least 6 months after we saw the reports and the scans. And so I live a typical life. My medicines, I'm still in active treatment because stage 4 is considered a terminal diagnosis. You must continue in treatment for the rest of your life. So I'm in treatments. I go in for injections and infusions and take pills, but it does not really impact my day-to-day life.
That talk about like the ultimate moving of the goalposts, right? I can't even imagine, going into appointment and being ready to celebrate only to just a total gut punch. So your initial diagnosis was breast cancer, is that correct?
Correct. And
then it spread. How did that affect? I mean, obviously you talked about how it affected you. How did it look like for your family?
It was of course devastating. Well, when I was diagnosed stage 3, my children were 2, 4, and 6. They were very young. And so all the physical changes happening to me were extremely difficult for my children to process. My middle daughter, she drew a graphic novel of me, and it was all these, I lost my hair and I lost my breasts, and there's tubes and there are all these things. And she even drew this one picture where I was like being attacked because the radiation in her mind was all these like superhero kind of things, like I had to battle these strange chemicals and all of a sudden I was radioactive and all these things. But in the end, she drew me coming forth as a hero, so that was super sweet and special. Even though I did not like the pictures of me, she drew it bald and all scarred up. But that's beside the point. She was sweet. So when they're young, just that physical change is so hard on the children. They don't have any idea what's going on. They don't understand at all how a medicine that should be doing you good, she could seemingly do so much harm. But then moving forward, of course, with stage 4, our life appeared much more normal to the children. And we've been very open. We answer their questions. We let them know when I'm going in for a test, and they'll ask me, did you pass your test? Did you fail your test? It's all in a child's mind related to school, of course, but we've been really open and want them to know what's happening in our lives. I feel very strongly about this because I believe that if I were to shut down this huge part of my life, this thing I'm processing that's impacting my emotions and the way I'm reacting to life, if I cut them out of that part of the equation, they don't really understand me and they don't understand what I'm going through. And so our relationship is much more frail. And even though they were young, it felt important to be honest, and I do not regret that at all. Now my children are, 7 years older, and so they're so full of empathy, and they can see other people's lives and really wonder what's below the surface, because they know that on the outside I look completely healthy, but below the surface there's so much more going on. And when they approach life and approach people, they are always inquisitive about what's happening in their life, and it's made them really good friends. It's made them real resilient because they sort of already have that expectation that life isn't going perfectly and we're all doing our best, and it looks different for everyone.
You've done a great job with them. I love all of your kids. They are some of the kindest, imaginative, nicest kids that I've met. How about your husband? How did he take everything? I know he's been a rock. He's amazing as well.
My husband is amazing. That is 100% sure. We decided actually when I was done with stage 3 cancer treatments, we had this probably 3 to 4 month break before my PET scan showed that I had stage 4. And we went on a date, and he had always wanted to go back to school to get his PhD. And I felt real strong that this was the moment, it's time. We had gone through all these hard things for me, and I really wanted to really invest in him in the next season of our life. And so I encouraged him. I said, I feel strongly this is the time for you to get your PhD. And he said, I feel the same way. So it was really exciting. And he started his PhD, and halfway through for his first semester, of course, I got diagnosed stage 4. And instantly he wanted to quit. He's like, we can't carry both of these things. It's going to be a long road. And I just felt so strongly. I said, if I do have stage 4 and it's going to always be making me weaker, then there's no better time for you than to continue on this path that is your dream. And honestly, if you can finish this PhD, it'll give the kids a better life. It'll give you flexibility in your schedule. Of course, we were assuming my lifespan at the time was about 5 years. And so the idea was that perhaps he could finish his PhD just about the time I passed away. And then he'd have this new opportunity. And so he has, for these last 5 years, full-time police officer, full-time student, always present and available for me and the kids. And he is amazing. But when he talks about being a caregiver to me, what he says is that caregivers really experience a paradox because they want to do everything they can to make the problem go away for us. They will do anything to make our life better, to fix that problem. But no matter how much work they do, they cannot fix the problem. And so there's this constant cycle of desire to fix and all of this energy going into that. And yet there's no way they can bring a resolution to the problem. And so he has now become an advocate for other caregivers to be seen, to recognize the emotional strains they're going through. All of this is very important, I believe, for the better understanding of the cancer experience.
Tell us a little bit about some of the differences between pre-cancer Lauren and post-cancer Lauren. What have you noticed? What change? Obviously physical changes, but mental changes. What have you seen as some of the key differences?
I feel like I got free. I said, if I can overcome the fear of death through this disease, then there is nothing left in life to be afraid of. So I've always been a little intense, and I feel like cancer gave me the permission to just be all that more intense. Before cancer, I was a teacher and a young mom, and I was really committed to that season, and I saw it as a season. And I think we all think in this way. There's like a responsibility season, and then we're working toward this golden age season when we get to do fun things or whatever. And I think that I was willing to be a teacher and just take care of the kids. But in my heart, I was always longing for the moment when I got to sort of live out sort of my passions. And cancer just said, you know what? now's the time. If you want to have passions, let's do it now. And so what I did, I wasn't able to teach, especially at the beginning because of the chemo and how hard it was. But when I was diagnosed stage 4, I recognized that I had a lot of things inside of me, a lot of passion that I wanted to release. And I dropped everything in life that wasn't fueled by that passion. And I truly decided to step out and do the things that I thought were important in this world. And I had no idea what to do or how to do it, and I had no skills necessarily. And I had to start from scratch. And I sat in my room pretty much talking to myself, figuring out my thoughts on what I wanted to do, but I was doing it, and that's what I say right now is I may not get to all of the places I want to go in my vision for the cancer experience. I might not change everything, but every day that I get up and do it, I'm at least not wasting that day, right? I am living that day full of passion and purpose. And there's really nothing more I could do, even if I don't ever reach my goals. If my cancer pops up tomorrow and it doesn't work out, I can't find any treatment, at least I spent every day working towards something that was important to me. And if I don't fix the world's problems, which I do intend to do, but if I don't get to do that, my kids saw me live this out, right? With nobody who really could understand at the beginning, knowing that I didn't have the resources every day, but I just kept going. And over time, made a really significant change in a lot of people's lives. And I think that's what cancer gave to me. I call it the gift of cancer, was just that all of a sudden, when I stopped being afraid of death, and that was definitely a transition. It took a while to move into that. But one day I made a choice that there is nothing to be afraid of. It's going to happen. There's nothing to do about it. So let's just see what we want to do with the life I had. And I just sort of set that aside and was okay to live with that presence in my life, that presence that death was coming, and just started living as fast and as passionately as I could. And I just love this space I'm in right now.
The strength and the inspiration that you exude it. I love it. I don't know if that sounds weird, but there's two things in life, right, that we're guaranteed, which is everybody's born, everybody dies, and so to be able to face that head on and say, I'm not going to let it get the best of me is incredibly strong. You're still a teacher, maybe not children, and we'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. But first, let's hear another word from today's sponsor.
Today's episode of Clocked In with the Press is brought to you by our friends at Sip and Scoop in downtown Brentwood. Sip and Scoop started out as a food truck, serving coffee, hot cocoa, and desserts on the go, but the demand was so high that they had to open a shop at 234 Oak Street. Here at Clocked In, we love Sip and Scoop. They're just a few doors down from our offices, and we're there often enough that they know our names and orders. It's like Cheers, but better because there's dessert. Try their cold brew coffee or choose a latte or Americano for a classic coffee drink that can't be beat. And we haven't even talked about their breakfast sandwiches and avocado toast. Have I mentioned the root beer floats and the iced lemonades? Those are my personal favorites. Okay, obviously I could talk about food all day, but here's the point. You gotta go to Sip and Scoop. Visit them at 234 Oak Street in downtown Brentwood, or have Sip and Scoop brought to you wherever you are by DoorDash. Having an event? Let Sip and Scoop cater it. Give them a call at 925-684-7710 to find out more.
Thank you so much. So, speaking of still being a teacher, you created Adventure Therapy Foundation. What was behind your inspiration to create the organization?
Well, after I was diagnosed with stage 4, I had a season. I have about 10 to 12 weeks of what I call my dark season. I woke up every day and I every day wanted to prepare my household for my death. And every day I woke up and I did something that would make it easier. So when I died, my house would be better. There was less clutter, or my stuff was already sorted into 3 piles for each kid or whatever. And I lived through that every day. And after about 10 weeks, I woke up and realized I was no closer to dying well. This wasn't helping, right? I was really just in a cycle of fear, and there was no way to get out of it. And
you were controlling what you could control because you had this other portion of your life that felt out of control, it sounds like.
Maybe that's true, but it wasn't working for me, I'll tell you that. Every day I woke up and I was a little more depressed and I was a little more hopeless. And one day I woke up and decided enough is enough. it's time to do something different. And I literally sat on my bed until I could see myself moving in the opposite trajectory. And when I did that, I went out looking sort of for what would the next phase of my life look like? What was I going to do? And one of those things I did is I went for a backpacking trip in Yosemite, and I literally went into the wilderness, like waiting for God to inspire me and tell me what to do with my life. And I hiked out and I slept by a beautiful lake in the wilderness with nobody around. And I hiked all the way back, and I got to the point where I could see the parking lot, and I got so angry. I was like, I have been in the wilderness and I am not inspired. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I like stood in this high point and I stomped my foot and I was angry. God did not tell me what to do. And then I knew. I stood there and I knew. And I looked out. When you're going through the cancer experience, you move from box to box. It's like one specialist to their little room, to the treatment room, to the little room where they just define all the things that are going to happen to you. And you just go box to box to box. And over time, you start to live in these little boxes. Like nothing is integrated, and all your fears in your life have to stay separate until they can't be. And all these boxes are overflowing with questions, and you're just so trapped. And I stood on this high place and I looked out and I saw the horizon, and everything was growing and thriving together, and it spread out in every direction. And I took a deep breath and I was like, this is what I want people to feel. It's available even in these bad times, even in these hard times. You don't have to feel trapped or afraid. And so in that moment, I didn't actually know what to do, but I came home. And I had someone who had offered to help me, and I called that person. I said, I wanted to start a nonprofit, and I want to call it Adventure Therapy. And he said, okay, let's do this thing. And so he took care of everything for me, set me all up. And I've been pursuing this idea of giving people that feeling that our lives are integrated. We need each other. We can't box off, like I said earlier, cancer from our children or cancer from our spouse. Like we're not disconnected, disjointed. I'm the patient, but my husband walks beside me in this every day. And so I wanted people to be able to acknowledge how these things go together and give them the tools to bring their family with them in a healthy way through the cancer experience. And that's really what I've been working for ever since.
So what does Adventure Therapy Foundation offer to these families who have been impacted by cancer?
Adventure Therapy Foundation works to serve families through what I call the emotional side effects of cancer. So this is a word I've made up. No one's talking about how cancer impacts our mental health. There are no resources out there. In 7 years of treatment, no doctors ever asked me about my mental health or that of my family.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, and I've never been offered any resources along the way. I'm a young mom with stage 4 terminal cancer, and I was never, ever asked in my 7 years. And so I have begun to create language around what I call the emotional side effects of cancer, because they are there. They are typical. They're a typical response to cancer, but nobody talks about them. So every one of us, every single patient and survivor out there is going through these rhythms around emotional healing and processing, but they think they're the only ones doing it. And I believe that if we can just bring this to light, bring language to the experience of cancer, the emotional experience of cancer, it'll eliminate so much extra shame and fear that people are experiencing alongside of this typical process that they think is unique to them. Specifically, we work around fear, isolation, and a broken identity or shifting identities, because this is what I have found to be the pattern in people's lives. When I first began my organization, I just listened to people. I have stage 4 cancer, so they think there's nothing they can tell me that I haven't experienced for myself. So it's a very, very safe place here. And so I just would sit on the phone and listen to people for hours, and every person seemed to have this rhythm. And I started to recognize this rhythm of healing, these questions, and I could start to find where they were in their emotional healing process. And then I started to map that out. And then I started to define that. And over time, I've created opportunities for people to find where they are and then find the tools in that moment. And that's really the work I've been doing. We've created a platform. I call it a cancer coaching platform, because it's about coaching you through these emotions and experiences. But there's a virtual platform. We're currently creating a workbook to go along with it. And people can go on and really just hear others echo back to them what they're feeling, to be known and acknowledged during this when even your spouse or your partners or your family can't really know what you're feeling and the questions you're asking. But you can go online and hear other patients and survivors talk about it. It's so significantly healing because you know you're not the only one. You're not alone. You're not isolated, right? So this is the work I've been doing. Alongside of that, of course, is my retreats, which is what our flagship program. We started out by serving families, specifically families with school-aged children, with a free vacation. And again, at the beginning, I just wanted people to experience nature, to get outside and see how you could just breathe differently when you're not inside of a box or a room or a doctor's office. And I wanted them to experience sort of that emotional release in the woods or in a place they've never experienced. Now I just combine those two tools. I first provide the trainings and all of the online materials, the workbooks, and then we send families that have gone through that on a retreat.
Fantastic. How many families have benefited from the services so far?
That is a great question. Because of my diagnosis, I believe, I never look backwards. So I don't have a precise number there. I can guarantee it's been over 100, but I really don't know.
That's amazing. What would you say were some of the most rewarding moments that you've experienced so far in that?
This last summer, this last year, I guess, post-COVID, we decided to stop sending families out one-on-one, even though we do that sometimes, but start doing community retreats. And so we're taking 6 or 7 families together, all together, out on one retreat, and then leading them so they can interact with one another. And this last March, I led the first one of those retreats. And to sit and watch the families have these aha moments, it was the first time I really got to experience what my work was doing and what it meant to a person who could say, I didn't know that me and this 6-year-old with cancer have these same experiences, or me and this other man, we have the exact same responses. Like our initial reaction was the same, but he went in this direction and I'm going this direction. And you could actually look at your life and decide, is this where I want to go? But really it was just this aha, this being known, and have all these families just how they relaxed over the course of 2 or 3 days because they were just in a safe space, that everyone in that space knew the experience they were going through. And it just felt so, I think they just felt so known and safe. And I just loved it was, all I can say is transformation that happened from the first time they all met to the day we all went away and left the retreat. And on the way home from that event, no one in my car could speak. We were just literally speechless by what had occurred. And so I just love that moment. It's going to be always precious to me. No matter what we accomplish, I think that moment will be really important.
Well, transformation for sure, but the importance of community building. Like you said, knowing that there are other people, not just people who are living with a diagnosis. Yes, it's important, obviously, to connect with other people who understand what you're going through as a cancer patient. But now, it's the connection that can be built between spouses, children, who their peers, their day-to-day peers, they might not get it. And so to have that, and I'm sure just going forward, whatever happens to the person in their family who has the diagnosis, they will be able to share coping mechanisms and have somebody else to lean on, which is huge, I'm sure. What are some of the more difficult moments that have arisen?
Yeah, the most difficult, of course, is when families call me and they tell me sort of the moment often their spouse or partner are in, and I just know there's so little that can be done to make it right for them. And so there's just so much hurt going around. And even our local families when your family is going through the late stages of cancer, no one in the house can really leave the house. So no one in the community really knows what's going on. I've established actually a really good relationship with the Brentwood Fire Department. And when they come across a family, they will actually call me and let me know what's going on and how I can help. And so that's been truly wonderful. But it's just these difficult moments. And I do everything I can. I provide food, and I can bring flowers or treats or whatever it is. But mostly I just want them to know that even in these hard moments where there is no good answer, there's someone who will lean in. And most of us tell ourselves that when things get really hard, they need their space and you're just going to leave them alone, which is not true at all. They don't need their space. They need to know that they're loved and they're as safe as they can be in this really hard moment. And so that's why I think because of my diagnosis, I've had to process death so much, I can really lean in even when I know that death is just around the corner for this family, someone in that family. And I can just continue to lean in, text, check in. And I don't have any magic words. There's nothing that will erase that kind of pain. But the fact that they are not forgotten and that they are not alone, that is a lot. And I just keep doing that.
Well, and just knowing that they have somebody to listen. Speaking for myself, when somebody comes to me with a problem, my immediate reaction is to want to fix it. Maybe it's human nature. I don't really know, but just knowing that there's somebody who will listen and not necessarily, who can't fix it, but they're still willing to listen is a huge, huge thing.
You're absolutely right. I often just say, you are doing everything you can do. Just giving that assurance, like, we don't know if this is the right answer, but you're doing everything you can do. You're a good husband. You're a good wife. You're a good parent. Just keep doing that, And that's what I just say over and over.
So tell us a little bit more. You mentioned your online platform with lessons. I know that you had talked about it being in like phone app form.
Well, if there's anyone who wants to invest in a world-changing piece of tech, I have a number you should call. So yes, like I said at the beginning, I jumped in with both feet. I don't have skill sets for all of this, but I have such a vision to change not just one person's life, but truly to change the system of the cancer experience, the whole structure and the way it works. And so one of those solutions I have is called Can Be Innovations. And actually you can look it up at canbeinnovations.com. And
is it can be with
can be, like
be.
What can be.
Gotcha.
So we have established canbeinnovations.com. We actually have our first release of an app. So if you're impacted by cancer, we'd love to have you on our initial release, and you would be one of the testers and get in there and see what we're doing. But we honestly believe that this app could change everything for the cancer experience. It's also going to have the ability to change everything for nonprofits who want to find clients, the people in their cities and in their regions, hospitals, cancer centers, how they serve their region. It's just so full of answers. The things, it's not that complicated. We have technology, but no one's invested from a patient survivor's perspective. I think there's only 3 good apps for the cancer experience. They're really designed from a pharmaceutical or a hospital perspective. Where my app is designed by me and 2 others. They're both stage 4 young adults. And we all just want to do something important with our stories and our experiences. And so we have come a long way. I've been told this is just the beginning, which is not what I wanted to hear. But we've come a long way, and we have a really nice app that tells our intentions, what we think will solve these problems. And so, yes, I would love if anyone who wanted to invest in bringing true change to the experience of cancer, I have a pitch deck for you. So just give me a call.
And I'm sure it's as amazing as this has been. But Rise is actually what I was thinking of. I know that we had spoken about it last year. Time's not real anymore. But that is your lesson and lecture platform. Is that correct?
Correct. So that one we were able to develop out, and we brought in survivors who have used their diagnosis to become experts at something. So they became certified or they started a nonprofit. And so they're able to talk from their experience in cancer, but then also the tools that they learn to help others in that area. And so we've collected dozens of experts and interviewed them so that anyone who gets on the platform, if they're having problems in their relationship or if they're having problems with finance or advocacy, whatever it is, mostly around these emotional side effects of cancer, but these ideas are there, and you can listen not only to their story and feel known, but also see what solutions they found along their way.
And is that also what the workbook that you mentioned earlier will be in conjunction with?
Exactly.
Fantastic. This next question I am most excited about because we have chatted about this as well, but you do have your own adventure coming up. I am so excited for you. I can't wait to see your photos and hear your stories, but tell us more about where you'll be going, why, all of that good stuff.
So I am living all this out. Everything I preach, I do it myself, right? So I walk the cancer story and I live my own adventure. I have wanted to do this particular adventure since college, so it's a huge, exciting moment for me. It's also absolutely terrifying, which makes it a really good adventure. But I will be walking the Camino de Santiago. I'll leave in 2 weeks. Well, I'll leave on June 13th, and I'll be gone for a month. And the Camino de Santiago is a pilgrimage. It ends in Santiago, which is the third holiest location for the Catholic Church. It's where St. James is buried. And the pilgrimage began thousands of years ago. And pilgrims from all over Europe would travel these paths to Santiago, which is located near the ocean at what at one time they thought was the end of the world. It's actually literally called Finiterra because it is what they thought was the end of the world. So you would literally travel to the end of the world in faith that you would experience something along the way. And so over these 1,000 years, they have built monasteries every 15 miles or so. And so what you do is you check in at the first monastery at the starting town. You get a little pilgrim passport, and every day you wake up and walk 15 miles to another. And when you arrive, there's a place for you to stay. They have pilgrims food and feast, and they minister to you. And every day you get up and do it again. And so I'll cross some mountains, I'll walk to the ocean, and every day I'm going to get up and put on my boots and start walking.
That sounds amazing. I have no other words for that. And someday I think, I'll be able to go do it for my own self, for my own personal reasons, I'm sure. But I think that you're going to get so much out of it. I love seeing people, fill their bucket list and check items off. I couldn't be more excited for you.
Oh, me too. So in medieval times, when you were caught with a crime, you had the choice to go to jail for life or walk the Camino, because they said there is no way you could walk the Camino and not come out a changed person. And today, I think very, very few people do it for religious reasons. But even in the documentaries you watch, people's lives are changed by the process. And so I have every intention of coming back completely new. I have no idea what that means, and I'm super excited about it, but I'm going to come back completely new and with so many wonderful ideas processed and things to share with the cancer community. So I'm very, very excited about the transformation.
I can't wait to hear about it. And I know, even, again, speaking for myself, even a short hike some days is life-changing depending on what frame of mind I'm in. So to wake up and do 15 miles every day and just have that time, I know, it does go through towns. It's not all nature, but just to see that changing landscape and meet up with others on the trail. And you have a couple of friends who are going with you. I'm so excited for what it's going to bring for you.
I think in today's society, we set aside time for vacation, but very rarely is that restful. And we set aside time for professional development and all these things. But so rarely do we set aside time for personal development, for processing all the things that happened in a year or in a lifetime or in a relationship. And because of that, our minds get so tight and cluttered. And so I think, and there has been research about how your mind processes at the pattern of your feet. And so this unraveling that will happen of your thoughts just in a very natural way along the walk will be significant. But I think it is important for us as a society to start paying attention to our mental health and setting aside maybe not 30 days, but 3 hours to just be and not be something specific, just be. And I think that this is a very important lesson, again, that I want to share with others, that it's important to take time for these kinds of processes.
100%. Put the phone down, turn the screens off, turn the noise off. I'll actually be out, we spoke, I'll be out on my own trail during some of the time that you're away, and I'll be thinking of you. In closing, my last question would be, what advice do you have for people who have maybe just received their own cancer diagnosis?
If you're just diagnosed, find somebody to talk to. Find another patient or survivor who's your age. It doesn't actually matter if they have the same kind of cancer, but find someone who is also a young mom or also a dad or whatever it is that you are. Find someone who is that and go through life, because no one's going to have all the answers. So they don't have to have your exact diagnosis, but they can know what it feels like to juggle life with this new diagnosis. And that is what is important. That is what you actually need the most during this season. So the very beginning is such a shock and your life is shifting, but the very end of treatment is very difficult as well. The end of treatment and the year following is extremely difficult and unacknowledged, completely unacknowledged. And so I think that's best where you come to me, look at the resources I've provided, and let me help you through that next season.
So tell us where people who either have a diagnosis that is impacting their family, or people who may just want to help, or like you said, invest, where can they find you on our World Wide Web?
Yeah, you can find us at adventurefound.org. And from there, you can look at our RISE program, which is where all the modules are. You can donate there, because I really need monthly donors. Did I say I need monthly donors? I need some monthly donors. So you can donate there and invest in the work that I'm doing. I am serving the vast majority of the families that I serve are right here in our East County. And so I would really love for local businesses and other families to help support these families here.
I know that you've had some great support from some downtown Brentwood businesses. I would love, if you're out there, if you're listening, if there's one organization that you choose to donate to this year, let Adventure Therapy Foundation be it. They do so much good work for the people in our community, and it's worth it. It's needed and it's worth it. Thank you again so much. And that is it for today's episode of Clocked In with the Press. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen in. Be sure to tune in next week when we'll be sitting down with Brentwood Parks and Recreation Director Bruce Mulder to chat about all the fun summer opportunities coming your way. And also, be sure to tune in every Friday for our weekly news and sports episode. If you would like to read more news stories of East Contra Costa County, you can do so through our website at www.thepress.net or through our Twitter and Instagram at PressClockedIn. If you have any thoughts on this episode or any other before it, you can email them to podcasts@brentwoodpress.com. That's all I have for you today, but I look forward to next time. This is Melissa Van Rooten, clocking out.
Thanks again to this week's sponsor, Sip and Scoop. Remember that feeling of hearing the ice cream truck coming down the street as a kid? Bring back that feeling by visiting Sip and Scoop. They started out as a truck too, and now they have a brick and mortar shop right here in Brentwood, so you don't have to chase them down the block. Sip and Scoop has all kinds of high-quality desserts to satisfy any sweet tooth. Gelato, root beer floats, and iced coffees are just a few of my favorites. And the whole menu is available to go on DoorDash. Stop by their shop in downtown Brentwood and get your scoop on.